Hi, I'm Don Barry, and this is another edition of CFBC Through the Years. You know, earlier this month, I reminded you that October is known as Pastor Appreciation Month. And a few weeks ago, I shared with you about my beloved childhood pastor, Reverend Floyd Gent, as well as my beloved adult pastor, Mike Fogerson. Today, in keeping with that theme of pastor appreciation, I want to tell you about our earliest pastors, the men who God placed here as the shepherds of our early church, the men who possessed vision for who and where we are today. On August 8th, 1937, 33 charter members met with a group of pastors from the 9 Mile Baptist Association and formed our church. They called Reverend Floyd Roth to be the very first pastor. Dr. J.S. Morrison sold that young congregation the ground on which our church building stands today. And in a short 18 months after that purchase, the church began digging the basement of our present-day church. That digging was led by none other than Reverend Roth himself. They did it by hand, and they also built a parsonage at the back of the lot for him and his wife to live in. Now, up until now, Reverend Roth had to work besides being our pastor. He was bivocational. But the church was growing in leaps and bounds, and after 2 years of being formed as a congregation, they were finally able to pay him as a full-time pastor so he could concentrate on nothing more than the work of our church. Unfortunately, these were terrible times in our world. Adolf Hitler was terrorizing Europe, and Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. So many men from our community enlisted or were drafted into military service. Our pastor saw a need, and he enlisted to serve as well as a chaplain in the armed forces. He left Chester in 1942 and was stationed in California. And after the war, he and his wife decided they would stay there. The church then called Reverend Tr Brown as its second pastor. People were being saved. People were being drawn to the Lord, and the church was quickly outgrowing its little basement home. Everyone knew that it was time to move up. We needed to finish our building. Well, Reverend Brown had the foresight to establish an offering, special offering, on homecoming and other special services throughout the year, and established it as a building fund. However, he didn't feel he was the man to lead us through an enormous building program. And soon he answered the call to a new church which was being established just outside of Pinckneyville. So along came our third pastor to Chester FBC in the person of Reverend Telus Young. Now, Brother Young had experience in building and fundraising. He went into the community armed with architectural designs and began seeking support. He sought help from the Illinois Baptist Association, and the upper part of our church began to be built. But the building wasn't Reverend Young's only concern. He reached out to the young people of Chester. There was a tremendous baby boom following World War II, and Reverend Young recognized this and desired to see all those children in our Sunday school and in our church. And finally, after much work and much sacrifice, our new upper church building was dedicated on February 25th, 1951. We had reached our goal that had been established way back when Reverend Roth was here 14 years earlier. Sadly, 1 year later, Reverend Young felt God calling him to move on, which he did. And then the church called their fourth pastor, Reverend Glenn Bunfill. Now, Reverend Bunfill had a beautiful singing voice. and he loved to sing as much as he loved to preach. He led the music and worship, and he started not only an adult choir, but in addition to that, a youth choir. He initiated a bond with our sister church in Ellis Grove, and then the two churches came together and started a very large choir and presented cantatas at Easter and Christmas in both of the communities. He oversaw the finishing touches of the new sanctuary. But, again, unfortunately, in the mid-1950s, racial strife was beginning in the United States. And Reverend Bunfill found himself embroiled in the midst of controversy when a young white woman in our church fell in love with a young black man in our church. He supported them and he lifted them up, but became heavily criticized, and it led to him resigning as our pastor in 1955. Following his departure, what the church required mostly was healing. And you know, God had a plan. You see, next he brought a man here who not only would bring healing and comfort, but also peace. A man who would bring on brand new growth and win many souls to the Lord. That man I've already told you about, Reverend Floyd Gent. Well, I hope you've enjoyed hearing about our early pastors. These four men got us on the road, got us in this beautiful sanctuary. And next week, we're going to take a look at four men who preceded our current pastor, Mike Fogerson. Join us next week as we take a look at those men and what they've done for our church. Thanks for watching.